So yesterday we did 159 to 161. Do we have a book for him? Okay, so we're going to start this longer piece, which means that we're going to probably spend today, tomorrow, and Thursday on it. Okay, page 165. What?
I said I won't be able to read it.
Huh? You can watch us on YouTube. Yeah.
On what page?
165. So Tova introduced you to these people. Michal, Malka, Yocheved, and Sarah, and that's Tova, and Yaakov, and David, and Michal. Michal, you remember. Back to Toronto.
From Toronto?
Yeah.
In Toronto.
He's from Toronto, she's from Toronto. Okay, so Hayinayim Amrot Hakol, the eyes have it all, right? Which part of the body does one's soul show up most? The eyes, right? That's you see a person's neshama mostly on their eyes, right? So Eliezer says, "V'avo hayom el ha'ayin." Okay. So we should sing a quick nigun, right?
Mm-hmm.
So since about eyes, v'sechez einaynu b'shuvcha letzion berachamim v'techez einaynu b'shuvcha letzion berachamim v'dirai lai So Eliezer has found Rivka, and now he's talking to her father and her brother, Betuel and Lavan, and he tells them, "Vavo hayom el ha'ayin." I came today to the fountain. Right? So nilmad mishevet miYehuda Rabbi Avraham Eger beno shel Rabbi Leibel Eger. So this Sefer called Shevet miYehuda. His name was Rabbi Avraham Eger. He was the son of Rabbi Leibel Eger, who was the Talmid Muvik of the Ishbitzer. He was also by the Kosker, grandson of Rabbi Akiva Eger. So b'vaksha pitchu et ha'inayim et ha'oznayim v'et ha'alev. So open your eyes, your ears, and your heart. Shabbat hazo Kol Inyana Hu Kiddushat Ha'ayin. So this Shabbos is all about the holiness of the eye. Right? So you know that we have she has very sensitive hearing, and if there's discussion somewhere else. So you know that we have the mitzvah of V'lo tatuvu acharei levavchem, right? V'acharei einechem, right? Eyes are the whole topic of Keddushat ha'inayim, the holiness of the eyes, is a very, very important thing. And there's the outer eyes, and there's the way we protect our eyes or don't protect them affects our ability to see deeper. Okay. So Avraham Avinu tziva et Eliezer lechapes isha livno hakadosh. Avraham Avinu commanded Eliezer to find a wife for his holy son. באותם ימים אברהם אבינו היה האדם העשיר ביותר בעולם. Avraham Avinu was the richest man in the world. Eliezer הגיע עם שיירה גדולה. Eliezer arrives with a big caravan, 120 משרתים, 120 servants, מתנות, 10 גמלים, gifts, 10 camels loaded with all kinds of gifts. Eliezer הגיע למעיין, and he comes to the fountain, לעת ערב, לצאת שואבות, at the time that the women who are drawing the water from the well come out to get water. And it's almost at the end of the day. And he sets himself a sign, and he says, the girl that I'm going to ask her to please tilt your pitcher so that I can have a drink. And she will reply and say, drink, and I will also give your camels to drink. She is the one that you have proven to be, that you have signaled to be the woman to be Yitzchak's wife. Al pi masoret Chazal, Rivka hayta besach hakol bat shalosh. Right? Rashi brings this medrash that Rivka was all of 3 years old, right? And that's pretty amazing, right? And do I have any problem with people having trouble believing that? No, I don't have any trouble with that. We know even from halacha, we know that as recently as 400 years ago, it was not uncommon that a woman would give birth, and a few hours later she was back at work. It's a mitziyut, and we know it from halacha. When it comes to Dan Yaakov, can you share your book with Moshe? Mm-hmm. So Moshe, by the way, there's a Mishnah about all the things that you got around your neck, a Mishnah and Shabbos. Some of those you can wear on Shabbos, some of those you can't. You probably remember the Mishnah too. Anyway, not now. Some of them are considered beged, some of them, yeah. Okay, so Rivka was all of 3 years old, right? So if you tell me that back in those days, a 3-year-old was already physically developed enough to be able to do this kind of work that she was doing, to go and draw water at the well, etc., it doesn't shock me. It's a possibility. Okay, it doesn't shock me that that's a possibility.
But 3 years then is like
Here, she's going to share with Pnina. Okay, yeah. There's going to be another one to share. Shira, can you share with Tova? What are you saying, Michal? 3 years then is what?
3 years then physically is
It's not the same as 3 years now physically. That's what I'm saying. People started working much younger, and when I was 9 years old when I started working, so not such a big difference. Okay, so Rivka is 3 years old. Indeed, in those days, girls were far more physically mature. But she still was a girl. And nevertheless, she said something awesome. She said, I will also give water to your camels. So Eliezer understands that she's the right girl. So we have to go back to the beginning. Right? Everybody knows that we have a minhag to eat fish on Shabbos. Right? Why? Fish don't have eyelids. They don't close their eyes. There are some that do, actually, I believe. But generally, fish have their eyes open all the time. They're always open. And they're aware of what's going on around them. Now, he didn't explain why we have the minhag yet, but generally the minhag is that the fish survived the flood, right? They didn't get destroyed in the flood. Apparently they weren't corrupted. So so pay attention to this amazing thing about eyes. The Zohar says, and Shema Yisrael, you see where we are? Yeah. The Zohar says that Shishma hu Rashi Tevot Se'u Marom Einechem. Lift your eyes, Shin Mem Ayin. Se'u Marom Einechem. Lift your eyes up to heaven. Laset et Einayim u'mamash lirot. Raise your eyes and see. Klomar. That means to say, Hamilah Shema sheperusha lishmoa. The word Shema, which means to hear. Higam Se'u Marom Einechem, it also means lift your eyes upward. Lirot mamash et masha atem shomim, try to see what you're actually hearing. Ze kol kach amok, this is so deep, כשאתם רק שומעים, אבל אינכם רואים מה שאתם שומעים, when you only hear but don't see what you hear, מישהו יכול עדיין לבלבל אתכם, somebody can still confuse you. אתם צריכים לשמוע כל כך עמוק, it means that you have to hear so deeply, עד שממש תראו את מה שאתם שומעים. To the point that you see what you hear. Where does it say that?
כל העם רואים את הקולות.
That's it, right? By Matan Torah, it says that we saw the sounds, right? רואים את הנשמע ושומעים את הנראה, right? There's a word for that in English where the senses sort of cross their borders. You know, I don't remember the word, but there's a word for that. But in any case,
Can I just ask where is that actually at the
Matan Torah? Yeah,
It's
in the
actually
Chumash.
in
Yeah.
the Chumash.
We saw the sounds.
Also, there's some sort of saying that's like.
What?
There's some sort of saying that's like something about a chacham, like Eino Berosho.
Einav Berosho, right?
Yeah.
Chacham Einav Berosho. But also in English, you say, "Do you see what I mean?" Right? You see what I mean, right? Because, so, in other words, in halacha, there's a concept that Eino Domeh Shmiya L'Riyah. But you can't compare hearing with seeing. But also in testimony, in being a witness, if you heard about something, you heard somebody in the next door committing a crime, so your testimony is not valid. right? You're standing next to you're standing outside a room. You hear somebody in there screaming, "No, don't shoot, don't shoot!" And you hear a gun go off, and you run in and you see somebody on the ground, Chas v'sholem, and you see somebody else standing there with a gun in his hand, and you heard it all. You even heard a name, right? You're not a witness. Your testimony is invalid because you didn't see it, right?
That's an halacha?
Yeah. Doesn't mean that you don't do anything about it, but you certainly can't carry out the full. It has to be like, that you saw. You might take the guy and put him in jail. You understand? You're not going to let him necessarily go free, but you're not going to be able to carry out any execution on him or any malchus or anything like that. Okay. There's a lot of halachot in halachot edut, which in modern legal system seems to be peculiar. For example, Moshe and Aaron, right? Two holy Eden. If Moshe and Aaron are the two of them together are witnesses to something that took place, their testimony is not allowed to be accepted. Why? Because they're related to each other. Right? And what about justice? What about justice? So the pshat is that Hashem gave us the opportunity to participate with Him in administering justice according to very specific restrictions. Understand? In other words, if such and such happened, and there were witnesses, etc., that meet the criteria, then you, the judges, have an obligation to administer the law. But if it didn't happen according to these criteria, then it's not in our hands. And we have to have the faith that as long as we're doing it, as long as we're carrying out our legal responsibilities properly, Hashem will take care of the rest. Okay? So what Reb Shlomo is saying over here is that the union of seeing, right? In other words, it's that when you see something, if somebody says, "Oh, I was at the shir today, and there was a big chumash on the table, Bereshis," and they told you about it, somebody else can come and say, "No, it wasn't there," right? But you see it, it's clear. Like, nobody's going to convince you that you didn't see it, right? Nekuda. So, in general, we don't pay much attention to most things that are happening around us. Until someone calls our attention to something particular. There are many people that have visited Yerushalayim and they don't feel anything, right? And there are people that have visited Yerushalayim and they saw everything, right? One of the differences is who was with them. What were they hearing when they went to visit the Kotel? They can be going with a tour guide. The tour guide might be telling them exactly when the Kotel was built, and all these different layers. So they come back from their visit. They know when the Kotel was built. But they did not at all truly see the Kotel. Right? They saw a wall. You can go with somebody who will tell them, Ten Yedim Mahu HaKotel. You know what the Kotel is? Mamash Gewalt Kan Amad Beit HaMikdash. It's a Makom Kadosh Kol Kach. This is such a holy place. Then they, because their attention was called to it, they actually see the kedusha of the kotel, right? You know, Kol Yisrael Arevim Zeh Bazer, we're all intertwined with each other, right? You can go somewhere and there could be a person in the room that is like mamish, like really focused on the holiness of something that's going on, and you are drawn to it and you sense it. And you could be somewhere where somebody is sitting there and inside themselves, they're doing leitzanut, they're being cynical and everything, and that will affect the atmosphere in the room as well. Okay? So most often, if we need somebody to call our attention to something to actually notice it, right? You walk in the street, did you see that guy wearing the hat with the rooster on his head? You know, if somebody didn't call your attention to it, you probably didn't see it, right? Even in halacha, there's an interesting halacha. There's a Mishnah that says, "Hakorei et Megillah lemafrei." I remember it. Somebody reads the Megillah backwards. Is he fulfilled the mitzvah of reading the Megillah or not? So the question, or also Hakorei et Shema lemafrei. If you read the Shema Yisrael backwards, did you read Shema? So who would read a Megillah backwards? Who would read the Shema backwards, right? And the answer is a sofer, or a magia, somebody who's checking for mistakes, has to read it backwards. You know why? Because when you're reading something that you're familiar with, if there's a letter missing, you know what happens? Huh? You won't notice. Your mind fills it in. Okay? Understand? So it's you gotta understand. You gotta understand how the eyes work. Okay. So לכן באמירת שמע ישראל, so when you say שמע, אנחנו מתכוונים באמת, שאו מרום עיניכם. So when we say שמע, we're like ממש having כוונה, lift your eyes to heaven. הביטו גבוה למעלה. Look high up. יש אנשים שנוטים להסתכל תמיד כלפי מטה. Now watch what Reb Shlomo is doing. There are people who are always looking down. כל דבר שהם רואים, everything that they see, הם מסתכלים עליו כלפי מטה. Whatever they see, they're looking down. אפילו על השם. They're even looking down on God. הם נראים כאילו הם מסתכלים לשמיים. It looks like they're looking up to heaven. אבל הם מסתכלים על השמיים במבט נמוך. They're looking at heaven with a very lowly perspective. מרום זה יותר גבוה משמיים. Bless you. מרום means even higher than the sky. לשאת עיניים למרום, to lift your eyes למרום, to the highest, פירושו להביט בתוך חזון גבוה, that means to say, learn to acquire a high vision. כשאני מקבל עול מלכות שמיים, when I'm accepting upon myself the yoke of the kingdom of heaven, ואומר שמע ישראל, and I say שמע ישראל, פירוש הדבר, שהעיניים שלי מביטות לגבהי מרומים. It means that I'm looking to the highest of highest places. Right? The Zohar says that Shema Yisrael Hashem Elokeinu Hashem Echad, the Zohar calls it Yehuda Ila'ah, supernal unification, and Baruch Shem Kavod Malchuto L'Olam Va'ed, the Zohar calls Yehuda Tata'ah, unification on the lower level. And the second book of the Tanya is all about that, explaining what Yehuda Ila'ah is. From the one perspective, it's to see that all this is pretty much like nothing, okay? Like all this physical reality that we're also accustomed to, and we think this is reality, that is, it's existent only because right now Hashem is speaking it into existence at this instant. It doesn't have any reality of its own. And Baruch Shem Kavod Malchuto L'Olam Va'ed is to see the unity, the oneness of Hashem in all this physical reality that we're living in. In fact, I was learning this week that the Tzemach Tzedek explains that the mitzvah of believing in God is not so much about believing that there is a God. You don't have to be such a big Talmid Chacham to say, oh, there's a world, there must be a creator. The mitzvah of believing in Hashem is to believe that Hashem, that Hashem is in the supernal realm and here in this world without any difference whatsoever. Right? That Hashem is present in everything that you see. Hashem is present in you, in every person, in every grain of sand, no less than anywhere else in the highest of places. Okay? So Seuma Roma Nechem is, and there are meditations to learn this, understand, but like, to and meditate on this, that it's all the creation of the Kodesh Baruch Hu. Okay? Somebody says good morning to you. Somebody doesn't say good morning to you, right? So on the street level, this person said good morning, this person didn't say good morning, right? Mm-hmm. On a higher level, Hashem's hand is present in all of this too. You understand? In other words, the larger the perspective that you have, the more you begin to realize that it's a lo kol kach pashut, right? You could be walking down the street and somebody says good morning to you and you feel like $1 million. You could be walking down the street and somebody says something to you and you feel like what did I do to deserve that type of thing, right? You're walking down the street and you see somebody do something beautiful. It's also hashgacha pratit. You see somebody doing something that's not so nice. It's also hashgacha pratit. Hashem wanted you to see that for some reason. Shira, can you get it? Okay. So. Okay, that's lovely. Things are going well. Yeah? Okay. You're going to sit there and you're going to share with the whole, okay? So, he goes on and he says like this. השבט מיהודה אומר שלהיות עבד פירושו להיות אדם שתמיד מביט כלפי מטה. הוא מסתכל על כל דבר בצורה שלילית. So the Shevet Yehuda says that to be a slave means that you're always looking down. You're always looking at something in some kind of a negative way. אנשים מסתכלים עליו במבט שלילי. People look at the slave in a negative way, והוא מסתכל על העולם במבט שלילי, and he too is looking at the world in some kind of a negative way. לבני אדם ישנה היכולת לגרום לאדם להביט על הכל בעין רעה. People have the ability to cause another person to look at things with a bad eye. להיות עם מבט שלילי על היהדות. To have a bad eye on Yiddishkeit, al achirim, and other people, labit klape mata al atzmo, to look down on yourself, Hakol lemata, everything is down, down, down. Anashim ka'ele mishubadim la'olam. Such people are basically enslaved to the world, meaning to the domain of time and space, right? Ulam anashim b'nei chorin, but people who are free, anashim shehem avadim rak la'Hashem, people who are servants exclusively to God, hem ele shecholim ligrom la'adam, they can help another person, she'enav yabitu tamid klapei mala, that they should always see things with an upward perspective, an elevated perspective. And that's a totally different way of looking at things. Okay? Once Reb Shlomo said that apparently at some point he met with the Minister of Tourism here in Eretz Yisrael, and he said, give me a budget, I'll bring you 20,000 dolim in a year, and he says to the guy, he says, you think advertising Israel by putting posters of the beaches in Tel Aviv and the women in beach clothing, that's what's going to attract Yidden to come to Eretz Yisrael? If they're interested in the beach, they'll go to the Bahamas, or they'll go to Quebec or whatever it is, where it's really cold or something like that, But that's not how to bring people to Eretz Yisrael. And the Minister of Tourism says, "What do you know?" Okay. Perspective to see what's going on. Take for example. So Reb Shlomo said at that time, he said, people were coming to Israel, and the tour guides were talking about, or a lot of Jewish education was, these people tried to kill us, these people did kill us, this happened, everybody is against, and somehow miraculously we survived. And he says, how many Yidden want to be Yidden just because somebody is against us? There's actually one of the theories of Jewish history is that it's the anti-Semite that kept the Jew Jewish. Now, there's a certain truth there in that in the countries where there wasn't much anti-Semitism, the assimilation was very, very intense. And like it is right now, the rate of intermarriage in America is over 50%. In some communities, even as high as 70%, okay? And in countries where there was, where the Jews were constantly reminded, you're Jewish, right? So there wasn't as much assimilation. So that's one of the theories of Jewish history. But honestly speaking, do I want to be a Jew because the anti-Semite reminds me that I'm a Jew? Or do I want to be a Jew because there's something really special about being a Jew? Right? Understand? What is my perspective on being Jewish? Is it? Am I looking at it from Olam Hazeh, from this world's perspective, just like looking down, and this is no good, and this is no good, and that's no good, and that's no good, and that one hates us, and that one hates us? Or do I want to have a beautiful perspective and see a much larger, beautiful picture? And that, yes, there are problems right now. We're in the middle of a very tough situation, right? But so if you just have a narrow perspective and you just see things just from worldly eyes, and if chas v'sholom you watch CNN and all these other media outlets, right? So then it's like, oy vey, oy vey, oy vey. But if you have a wider perspective and you see that, Hashem is behind everything and that Hashem is good, well, there's something very special happening. What it is, don't ask me. I don't know. But I'm just saying, but something positive is happening. Why it has to happen in this way, I have no idea. But the question is, what's the perspective? So that's what he's talking about. So a slave sees things negatively all the time. People look at him negatively. He sees things negatively. A free person sees something beautiful, something awesome is happening, right? I've mentioned already a number of times. The Sfat Emet says, why are we called Yehudim? Right? Yehudim is Al Shem Shevet Yehuda. So why are we called Dafka Yehudim? Why not called Abrahamim? Why not Yaakovim? Right? Why are we called Dafka? So Yehuda is from the next week's parsha, right? She says Hapam Odeh Lashem. Right? The name Yehuda is related to the word Hoda'ah, giving thanks. The Sfat Emet says we're called Yehudim because we're the only people who are capable of saying Hoidu Lashem Ki Tov Ki Lolam Chazdo, that we have the strength to have faith that even when we're in a situation of Olam, in a situation of Helem, of concealment, we still see it as Chesed Hashem, as it's all God's kindness. Okay? Who's from the States? Thanksgiving is coming up, right? Mm-hmm. Was it the third Thursday in November or something like that? Thursday. Last Thursday in November, and they all eat turkey?
Not all.
Okay. You don't, okay. Right? And what do you call a turkey in Hebrew? Hodu. Some Yid probably convinced everybody for Thanksgiving that they have to eat turkey, Some Jewish farmer or whatever, I don't know. Okay, just cute, okay. So Hodu Hashem, Anyway, so he says, לפעמים אני זוכר לנסוע מעיר לעיר ולהופיע במקומות שלא הייתי בהם מעולם. So Reb Shlomo says, sometimes as I'm traveling from city to city, and sometimes I show up in places that I've never been to. And even Mistavev Sham, I walk around there, ונותן שלום לאלפי אנשים, and I say shalom to thousands of people. יש אנשים שכשאני אומר להם שלום, there are people that when I say shalom to them, הם מסתכלים ממש לתוך העיניים שלי, they look into my eyes. יש אנשים שמסתכלים כלפי מטה או הצידה, and there are people that I say shalom to them and they turn their eyes away or they look down. אני לא מתיימר להיות פסיכולוג, I'm not pretending to be a psychologist, אבל אנשים שפועלים משהו בחייהם, people that are doing something with their lives, ששואפים אל הנצח, people who have a yearning for eternity, אנשים כאלה מסתכלים תמיד לתוך העיניים. Such people are always looking into your eyes. החיים שלהם מבוססים בעומקם על הרצון לא להסתכל לעולם במבט נמוך. Their lives are based on a deep will not to look at the world with a lowly perspective. I don't know if you ever paid attention to that, like people who look into your eyes, people don't look into your eyes, and so on. But there's I heard the story that once Reb Shlomo was he was in Russia. No, and he was coming back from one of those countries, and he had a layover in some airport. Anyway, he finally arrives in London, and he sees the Chassidish Yid, and was it London, some other place, and he runs up to him and he hugs him. And the guy says to Shlomo, says, "You're mistaken, I don't know you." So Shlomo says, "I'm not mistaken, I haven't seen a Yid all day, I've been waiting to see a Yid to give a Yid a hug." Right? You see the illustration between higher and lower perspective? Right? On another occasion, he was coming back from Russia, and a young man was accompanying him to the airport, and he's crying. And Shlomo says, "Why are you crying?" So he says, "Because you gave everybody something, and you didn't give me anything. And Shlomo he gave away every single sefer, he gave away every pair of sisters he had, he gave away his talis, he gave away every pair of tefillin that he brought with him. He was going back to the airport with nothing, except what he was wearing. The only thing he had left to give away was his yarmulke. So he gave his yarmulke to this young man. He arrives somewhere in Europe, and he hadn't put on tefillin yet that day. And he runs over to this Yid, and he says, "Excuse me, can you lend me your tefillin? I want to put on tefillin." So the guy says, maybe you should wear a yarmulke first. So Shlomo says to him, "I bless you that someday you should be wearing the yarmulke that I'm wearing right now." Good one? Yeah. Okay. Right? You understand? So what's your perspective? How are you looking? What are you seeing? We were learning this morning in Tanya, the Alter Rebbe quotes the Mishnah in Pirkei Avot, "Me'od me'od hevei shval ruach b'fnei kol ha'adam." Be extremely humble and be extremely careful to fulfill this teaching, to be humble before every person. Right? So here you are, you went to Bais Yaakov, a Bais Yaakov girl, right? You're coming home at the end of the day, school bag heavy with Sforim, and actually in Bais Yaakov they don't use Sforim, right? And they do, but over here they don't, they just dictate, right? But in any case, and you learn Torah all day long, right? And on your way home, you're passing by this coffee shop, and you see there's people that are there like from morning to night playing cards and so on and so on. And the Mishnah says, you have to be humble before these people. Does that make sense? How? Logically. Does it make any sense? Here you are, you're doing good things, you're even not a Bais Yaakov girl, even a Bais Rivka girl, it doesn't matter, you understand? But whatever it is, or you're working in a hospital and you're helping people, and here are people who are doing nothing and they're just just hanging out the whole time. And you're supposed to be humble before them, right? So that's Rebbe explains, see, the mistake of this world is that we're comparing ourselves to one another. But that's not what you're supposed to be doing. You're supposed to be comparing yourself to your own potential, to your own self. Don't judge another person till you're in their place, right? You don't know what it's like for that person. Have you been in their shoes? Do you have the same Yetzer Hara that they do? Did you have the same parents? Did you have the same experiences in life? No, you didn't. So maybe for this person to be sitting in the cafe instead of being a bank robber is taking more energy than you've put in 15 years of learning Torah. You don't know. You understand? So that's why be humble before every person. Okay? But the only reason I'm bringing that up right now is because, again, it's a matter of perspective. You see a Yid coming over to you, he's not wearing a yarmulke, he wants to borrow your tefillin, and right away you're looking to see, is he wearing a yarmulke or not? Maybe he needs a yarmulke also. So say, okay, I'll lend you my tefillin, and I'll also lend you my yarmulke. Are you prepared to take off your yarmulke for 5 minutes and stand without a yarmulke on your head so that this Yid can wear a yarmulke for 5 minutes? It's a question of what's your perspective, right? Do you have a very closed, narrow perspective, or I used to teach in Montreal in a conservative school, and so I took my students on a Lag BaOmer outing, and to the mountain, and across there's this little artificial lake there, or whatever, and from the other side of the lake there was a Rebbe from a Hasidic cheder with his grade 2 class or whatever, and I used to go into that Besmedrash from time to time. So the kids saw me from afar, and and they see me with these kids who aren't wearing yarmulkes. And I hear the Rebbe saying, "Zay sind goyim," you know. So as a mulgehet azazach, keimelish, yeah. So one of the kids says, "Aber Shulim is dorten." Okay, no translation necessary, right? Okay, and it's not like, well, what's your perspective? What do you see? Like, you know, you're putting everybody into a box, like, you know, like, okay. So Su'uma Romenechem, this is what he's talking about, and I'm sure you can come up with 100 examples yourself. Okay. So the last sentence that he had here was like really important. He says, when people look at you in the eyes, that's a pretty good indication that these people they have some kind of a sense about eternity. You know, if they're looking at your shoes, or at, you know, which designer stuck his name onto your clothes today, or something like that, you know, it's not about eternity. Okay. Al Shloshet HaRegalim ne'emar, for the Pesach, Sukkot, and Shavuot, it says in the Torah, Shalosh Pamim Bashana Yira'eh Kol Zichrucha Et Pnei Havaya Elokecha. By the way, notice I said Havaya, right? I'll explain that in a second. So 3 times a year, all Jewish males were supposed to come to the Beit HaMikdash to be seen in the presence of Hashem. Havaya, by the way, there are 12 possible permutations of Yud Kei Vav Kei. Havaya is one of them, and it's the only one that we're actually allowed to pronounce the way it's written. Havaya means being. Yud Kei Vav Kei it has the letters of Haya, Hoveh, and Yehiyeh. God was, God is, and God will be, all at once. That's the mitzvah of believing in Hashem, is that there's no past, present, and future separating for Hashem. And this is something which is beyond the human's capacity to comprehend. You cannot understand past, present, and future all at the same time, happening all at the same time, right? Because we're of this world. The world is defined by time, by the laws of time and space. Okay, so that was just in parentheses. So it says for the Shalosh Regalim that every Jewish male is supposed to show up at the Beit HaMikdash to be seen in the presence of Hashem, your God. Baregel ani ba lifnei Hashem. So on the Yom Tov I come before God. ואני מאפשר לעצמי להביט הישר לתוך העיניים הגדולות, and I allow myself to look directly into the great eyes שבהן Hashem מסתכל עליי, the great eyes with which God is looking at me. זוהי המהות של 3 הרגלים. That's what the 3 Yom Tovim are all about. Now, if you're not too scared, take a minute and just try to visualize that. Try to visualize, of course, Hashem doesn't have a body, right? So when we speak about Hashem's eyes, it's just a metaphor. Right? But it means that Hashem is looking, Hashem is watching, right? And just try to visualize that Hashem is looking at you, and you're looking back. Okay. Now, if you would really do that, we would probably all begin to shiver or jump out of our skins right now. Okay. But and to some level, in other words, without going a little bit insane, chas v'shalom, right? On some level, it's very important to be able to call that up and say and realize Hashem you are now looking at me. You know, among the early Hasidic masters, one of them was the Reb Zusha. The Reb Zusha and the Reb Elimelech, they were brothers, and they were both students by the Maggid of Mezrich at the same time as the Rebbe Levi Yitzchak of Berditchever and the Alter Rebbe. And there was always a controversy: does the Rebbe Zusha know how to learn or not? There was always a controversy. It was a person or an angel.
Person who was here.
So there was always a controversy as to whether the Rebbe Zusha knows how to learn or not. Why? Because as soon as the Maggid would begin a shir, and he'd start off quoting the pasuk, "Vayomer Hashem el Moshe," and Rebbe Zusha would start going into this kind of ecstatic state, or full of fear of God. Hashem spoke to man. Hashem spoke to Moshe Rabbeinu, and he would just started. He would, and the shir couldn't continue, and they'd have to carry him out. So he was never there for more than just the first sentence of the shir. So some said, how could he possibly know how to learn? He wasn't there during the shir. And others said he got it all just in that, just hearing that. Okay? In any case, so on the one hand, you know, like Yom Tov, Pesach, Sukkot, Shavuot, and so on, it's Yom Tov. You're celebrating, you know, festive meals, getting dressed up, and Hallel, etc., 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 right? But another deep essence, which we don't have experience with because we don't have the Beit HaMikdash at the moment, but Shibana B'Mehera B'Yameinu, is the experience of realizing that you're mamish in the presence of Hashem. Now, I don't know if everybody agrees with it or not, but there definitely is a shita, and you're into the whole Beit HaMikdash thing, aren't you? Harabayit and everything. So back in the old days, under Regolim, they used to open up the curtain in front of the Aron Kodesh, didn't they? For sure in the time of the Mishkan. And everybody would see the Kruvim. You familiar with that? No? Yeah. No, there's definitely, according to the one of the sheets, that's what was done. Like, in other words, the Kodesh HaKadoshim the curtain was opened, and everybody could see the Aron HaKodesh and the Kruvim and so on.
The mitzvah in Harbay or Yira'eh.
That's what we just read, yeah. So in the Gemara, they read it in both ways. They read it as Yira'eh, to be seen, and also they read it Yir'eh. Now there was a great revelation. Bichlal, Chassidus explains that what's pshat Yom Tov? Why can't you do work on Shabbos? Why can't you do work on Yom Tov? Besides the fact that God said don't, okay? Besides the simple, straightforward answer. So it's explained in Chassidut that, well, let me ask you the following question. You're going to your chuppah, right? And as you're getting closer to your chuppah, you get a call from the office. Your boss needs you to email him a document right now. What are you going to tell the boss? Excuse me, not now, right? You're going to your chuppah and your chosn says, excuse me, let's stop for 10 minutes. I want to go out and water the garden. Really? Right now in the middle of the chuppah, right? It's absurd, right? Because don't you realize what's going on, right? Somebody says to the rabbi, Can I do these things during the chuppah? And the rabbi says, no, I'm sorry, you can't. You got to be present. He says, really, there's all these things I can't do. I'm not getting married. Right? In other words, something special is happening, and because something special is happening, obviously you cannot do this and this and this and this right now, because if you're going to do that and that and that, you're not going to be present to what's actually going on. The deeper reason why we don't do Melacha on Shabbos and on Yom Tov is because there's a great revelation of godliness taking place. And in order to be able to be present for that, you cannot do Melacha. Now, if it sounds foreign to us, it's because we're so deep in Galut. Okay? So we relate to it with faith. Right? But the reality was that Bizman Shebeit HaMikdash Haya Kayam, I'm not talking about the times when there was a lot of corruption going on around there, but when it was in its pure state and it was functioning the way it's supposed to, and when we had the Mishkan and so on. Fact is that when you actually experienced a much higher state of divine revelation. Okay, and that's what we try to experience every Shabbos as well, and that's what we try to experience every Yom Tov. And that's the one of the reasons behind the rules about why we don't do Melacha on Shabbos and on Yom Tov, because if you're doing Melacha, you're very much involved in the mundane, and you're not free to be present, to receive the higher consciousness and revelation, or whatever word you want to use. Okay. So just to so we're going to continue tomorrow, Mr. Hashem, just to put it together. All that Reb Shlomo was talking about, these 2 pages, was to understand what does it mean when we say Se'u Marom Einechem. What is the idea of a higher vision, a higher consciousness, a higher perspective? Okay. From a higher perspective, there's a reason that you're sitting next to the people that you're sitting next to right now. It's not just stam that we all happen to be together at this moment. Now, if you ask me, do you know what it is? I don't know. I'm not going to pretend that I know, but I know that there's something about that. My neshama has to be together with all your neshamas right now. Your neshama has to be present now with all these neshamas. Understand? From a worldly, lowly perspective, it's not. What are you talking about? Doesn't make any sense. But from a higher perspective, that is all within the Achdut of HaKadosh Baruch Hu, we are the ones that happen that right now we were supposed to be together. Right now, every one of you, every one of us is supposed to be contributing something to the benefit of everybody else that's in the room. How? Well, you can just say, I accept upon myself the mitzvah, v'yahavta l'reacha kamocha, and just look around and wish everybody well. That might be the reason. There might be other reasons. Understand? Okay. Have a good day, everybody. By the way, you are welcome to ask questions and make comments during the share. So, please. Sarah, you're going to remember we're on page 167, please. Okay. So you're going to work these out for us, please. Because I'll tell you, I last week I watched Davis' Shir again. Last night I started watching last week's Shir again. It's so rich with material. Every minute is a gem.
No,
Which-
something else.
It's impossible to get it all just in one shot. You know what I mean? Like the Chaver really need to have it available to them so they can hear it again and again because, I mean, Leibush is a gem.
And why wouldn't you open it for the public?
Because maybe at some point we will. But because just like for example, I'm not willing to put Rabbi Fink's shiur into the public also because when he teaches at Ravinder's yeshiva, like the online yeshiva, so he sees the faces of the people live as he's teaching them.
Yeah. Okay.
So he can see if somebody is getting it, misinterpreting, and so on. And it's halacha, right? Now, if you hear somebody giving the shiur, and it happens very often, like with me, like you doze off. Shalom, see you, Kotev, thank you, Kotev, you too, Kotev. And you see somebody dozing out, and so on. And I doze off, and I hear, like, one thing, and then there was a link between point A and point C that I didn't catch, right? I can easily misinterpret. And that's why I haven't been broadcasting Rabbi Fink's shiurim at all, even the one that he gives over here, because people ask him questions, and maybe the same question that you ask, and the same question that he asks. Maybe you're going to get one answer, and he's going to get another answer from the same Rav. Understand? So you can't just make assumptions that everybody's going to get it equally well. Okay. Now, as far as Leibish's material is concerned, okay. As far as Leibish's material is concerned, maybe one day we will. So I'm going to see if it's matim, if it's not matim, and so on. Why am I learning? Why am I giving shiur in the Shlomo a little bit more be'iyun than just? This is available. People could read it in Hebrew. People could read it in English and so on. But it's happened again and again. When people start interpreting Shlomo superficially, they jump to certain conclusions and get into trouble. Okay. So, like for example, once Shlomo, like sometimes he would be asked to shine it, and he would say, "How could we not?" Okay. Now, Shlomo knew Kol HaTorah Kula. Okay. So if he said, "How could we not?" He knew Kol HaTorah Kula, and he knew that there's a basis for saying, "How could we not?" Happened one day that one of the Chaver, since years ago, there was a shaila that came up, and he paskined, "How could we not?" Why did he paskin, "How could we not?" Because he didn't know the answer to the question, and sometimes Shlomo would say, "How could we not?" Right? Like, why do you know Kol HaTorah Kula also? That you can say, "How could we not?" You know what I mean? Because he said, "How could we not?" So therefore, you already have permission to say, "How could we not?" Understand? Because Shlomo's teaching a piece of Ishbasur, and the Ishbasur is saying, "Hakol b'dei Shemaim, I feel the year is Shemaim." You already understand that? Do you know the rest of the Ishbasur where he says if you don't go through these 10 serious stages of Mamish trying to be in control of your life, and you did that all sincerely and seriously, and still an Afal Pi Kain, you couldn't overcome whatever it was, then you can say Hakol b'dei Shemaim afilu yireh Shemaim, right? But if you just read Hakol b'dei Shemaim afilu yireh Shemaim, just a sentence alone, out of context, you say, well, obviously, God doesn't mind that I'm doing this and I'm doing that, and I'm not doing this and not doing that. Okay? So there's certain things that, like, like we have to, Like, I don't just automatically broadcast everything. Verstehst? That's the way it goes. Now, if you could make the problem, so this stuff gets broadcast. Oh my, we're still broadcasting. I thought I stopped it.